Jesse, I see Alder Ugair on the attendees tab. I think we're set to go.
Just wanted to check, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. There was a problem with an update earlier today.
Sounds good. We are at 5:30 and have a quorum, and so I will call this meeting of the Madison Plan Commission for November 18th to order, and we'll get some information from our technical facilitator.
All right, welcome to our virtual Plan Commission meeting. We're going to cover a few basic items before beginning. If you lose connection at any point during the meeting, you can reconnect by clicking the link or calling the number in your original email. To members and city staff members, if you are able, please activate your video and keep it on for the duration of the meeting. Staff, if you are able, please activate your video when you are speaking. Use the raise hand feature when you'd like to be recognized to speak or ask questions. Staff, click raise hand when you are asked a question. The chair will do their best to call on committee members in the order in which their hands are raised. Lowering your hand will take you out of the queue. Members of the public who have registered to speak, the name you entered in Zoom must match the name you entered in registration. You will remain muted until called upon. The clerk will tell you when your time is up. After all registrants speak, a member of the body may ask you a question. If you need to share documentation with the commission, please send it in the email listed in today's agenda. Chair, the floor is yours.
All right, thanks. Our next agenda item is number 1, which is a period for public comment for items not on the agenda. Megan, do we have any registrants for item 1?
No one is registered.
All right. We will, there is a note on our agenda that there is an item dated 11/1 of 2024 related to women's sports and society. So I'll just make that note for the commission. Next, we'll go to disclosures and recusals. Do any members of the Plan Commission have any disclosures or recusals to make as required under the City Ethics Code? All right, seeing no hands. We will next go to our minutes for our last meeting on November 4th. Are there any additions or corrections from commissioners regarding the draft minutes that were circulated? All right, seeing none, could I request a motion a motion and a second to approve last meeting's minutes? All right, Commissioner Wisniewski, thank you.
Yeah, I move approval of the minutes from last meeting.
Thank you. Is there a second? All right, Commissioner Heck, take that as a second. Is there any discussion on the motion to approve the minutes? All right, seeing none, is there any objection to unanimous consent for this item as moved by Commissioner Wisniewski? All right, we will treat that motion as passing unanimously. Thanks for that. So, next on our agenda is to cover our upcoming meetings. Megan, do you want to do that, or you want me to cover those?
Go ahead, Chair.
Yep, great. So we'll meet again 2 weeks from tonight on Monday, December 2nd, then December 16th, and then we'll have a bit of a break through until January 13th of 2025, and all of those will be virtual meetings at 5:30. So we'll get those on the calendar. All right. Next we'll move to our consent agenda. It's the custom of the Plan Commission to remove from the agenda those items on which staff believes an application has been sufficiently reviewed to support approval, with all the conditions placed upon it by the various city departments, and in which the applicant accepts those conditions, and there are no individuals who have registered to speak in opposition to those items. The items proposed for the consent agenda tonight are, you'll see them up on the screen. The first is item 2 on our agenda, Legistar number 85650. I'll just identify them and then I can read them out once we agree that that's going to be the consent agenda. So item 2, item 3, Legistar 85419, which are both recommended for approval. And then skipping to items 10 through 15, which are all items to be referred to our December 2nd, 2024 meeting, and for the reasons kind of stated in the agenda. Are there, of those items which are before us for the consent agenda, are there any requests for separation for tonight's meeting? If not, I will read the agenda items into the record for our consent agenda, and then we'll open the hearing on those as a group. So item 2 is Legistar 85650, 6717 Odana Road in District 19, consideration of a conditional use in the Commercial Center District for animal boarding to allow an animal boarding tenant in a multi-tenant commercial building. Item 3 is Legistar item 85419, approving a certified survey map of property owned by Danisco USA Inc., located at 3322 Agriculture Drive and 5017 through 5025 Femrite Drive in District 16. Those are presented for approval. For referral to the December 2nd meeting are Legistar item 85651, which deals with 8102 Wellness Way and 8198 McKee Road in District 7, consideration of a conditional use in a campus institutional district without a campus master plan for the establishment, improvement, or modification of a primary use occurring outside an enclosed building to allow installation of various landscaping and gardening improvements and accessory structures associated with an existing hospital, Unity Point Health, Meritor Child and Adolescent Psychiatry Facility. Item 11 is Legistar 85416, which deals with 418, 420, 422, 426, 430, 432, 436, 440, and 444 West Washington Avenue, and 413 and 417 West Mifflin Street in District 4. This is consideration of a demolition permit to demolish 3 single-family residences, 4 two-family residences, 3 three-family apartment buildings, and 1 4-unit apartment building. Item 12 is Legistar 85418, which deals with 416 to 446 West Washington Avenue and 413 to 417 West Mifflin Street in District 4, consideration of a conditional use in the downtown residential 2 district for a multifamily dwelling with greater than 8 units to allow construction of a 6-story, 162-unit apartment building. Item 13 is Legistar 85420, approving a certified survey map of property owned by CRG Acquisition LLC, located at 416 to 446 West Washington Avenue and 413 to 417 West Mifflin Street in District 4. Item 14 is Legistar 85814, which would create section 28.022-00696 of the Madison General Ordinances to change the zoning of a portion of property located at 940 to 1050 South High Point Road, 1051 South Pleasant View Road, and 902 Landmark Trail from Temporary A Agricultural District to TRP Traditional Residential Planned District, and creating section 28.022-00697 of the Madison General Ordinances to change the zoning of a portion of property located at 940 to 1050 South High Point Road, 1051 South Pleasant View Road, and 902 Landmark Trail from Temporary A Agricultural to TRU1 Traditional Residential Urban 1 District, and creating section 28.022-00698 of the Madison General Ordinances to change the zoning of a portion of property located at 940 to 1050 South High Point Road, 1051 South Pleasant View Road, and 902 Landmark Trail from temporary A agricultural district to NMX neighborhood mixed use district, and creating section 28.022-00699 of the Madison General Ordinances to change the zoning of a portion of property located at the same address as 940 to 1050 South High Point Road, 1051 South Pleasant View Road, and 902 Landmark Trail from temporary A agricultural district to CC-T commercial corridor transitional district, and these properties are in District 1. And then finally is Legistar item 85415, approving the preliminary plat of the Hill Valley on property addressed as 940 to 1050 South High Point Road, 1051 South Pleasant View Road, and 902 Landmark Trail in District 1. And so given those items, I will open a public hearing and close the public hearing on these items, noting that by definition, there are no speakers opposed to any of the items. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented? Alderfield, thank you. Is there a second? Commissioner Sanders, thank you. You'll get the next one, Alder Uguer. All right. So we have a motion and a second for the consent agenda. Is there any objection to unanimous consent for the consent agenda? And seeing none, we will record the consent agenda as passed unanimously by the commission. So thank you. All right, we will move on to our next items, starting with items 4 through 6, which we will consider as one public hearing. And we do have some registrants, but we will start with the staff presentation for that item. And we have Lisa joining us tonight. Thanks.
Great, thank you. So before the commission now are 3 applications related to the redevelopment of 306 South Brearley Street. The applicant is proposing to demolish a 1-story commercial building to construct a 6-story mixed-use building with 120 units and 1,500 square feet of commercial space on one lot. A detailed discussion and recommendation for each application is in the staff report, and I'll be focusing specifically on the conditional use requests. The applicant is requesting approval of a conditional use for a mixed-use building with more than 60 units and a conditional use to exceed the 4-story building height that's permitted in the district. And because the property is located in the transit-oriented development overlay district, the permitted building height is 4 stories. For conditional use requests, the Plan Commission shall give due consideration to adopted plans. The comprehensive plan recommends neighborhood mixed use and includes heights up to 4 stories. And the Williamson Street Build 2 plan recommends that the maximum height for new construction in this area is 4 stories for projects with either affordable housing, preservation, or structured parking. Staff does note that the proposal exceeds the step back recommendation for Williamson Street as recommended in the design guidelines and criteria for preservation plan. So as it relates specifically to conditional use standard 11 and the request for additional height, staff do acknowledge the inconsistency with the Build 2 plan. This inconsistency does not preclude the standard from being found met, but staff asks that careful consideration is given to the surrounding context and resulting impacts. There is kind of nearby precedents for buildings that are taller than 4 stories that are constructed or being constructed along the Capital City Path and the railroad corridor that are adjacent to the site. This includes 302 South Livingston Street, 722 Williamson Street, and 302 South Patterson Street, all of which are 5 stories tall and within 3 blocks of the subject site. Further, staff believe that the step backs above the first floor facing Williamson Street and above the fourth floor facing South Burley Street minimize the visual impact of that additional height. And the proposed building, would have some shadow impacts on the Capital City path, but would have minimal impacts on any nearby residences. For this, staff noted that if the Plan Commission can find the conditional use approval standards met, then it should approve the requested conditional uses. And for the other requests, the recommendation is for approval. That's all. Thanks. And I'm available to answer any questions as well.
Thanks, Lisa. We do have registrants on these items, so I will open the public hearing and ask if you'd read the registrants into the record.
Okay, this evening we have 3 applicants representing the project team that have requested to pool their time for a total of 9 minutes. That will include Dan Schwartz, Ryan Stout, and John Chapman. And when those speakers are all here, we'll start the time.
All right.
Okay.
All right. The floor is open for our speakers, and I know you're sharing the 9 minutes, and I'll leave the 3 of you to allocate as between you to the extent that everybody wants to speak. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you. And thank you, Lisa. I'm Dan Schwartz from Sarah Investment Real Estate. We're extremely excited to be here. We're a local real estate company that live, work, and play on the east side of Madison, very near this site. We're a longtime supporter of Fête des Marquettes and the neighborhood, and I myself am a renter very near this project. And so we're really excited to add vitality to an incredibly cool neighborhood. So the site we're going to talk about today is 306 South Brearley Street. It's currently an old, tired, vacant retail and office property, or soon to be vacant, office property that sits on contaminated soil, which we're obviously committed to restore in conjunction with this project and restore the site to its highest and best use. What we're proposing, as Lisa said, is a 6-story mixed-use multifamily building. We're really excited about this site. We think it's very conducive to density. It's incredibly walkable, very bikeable. Both the walker and biker scores are about as high as you can get, and it's incredibly transit-oriented, being about 3 blocks away from the new BRT stations, and obviously right off our beloved Capital City Trail. So this is not a historic site, as Lisa said. It is near a historic site, and we've done our very best to be respectful of historic Willie Street with the breaking down of the visual massing and the setbacks we've incorporated into this project. About 75% of our neighbors on this project are commercial neighbors, making up about 92% of the lineal feet around the property, and there are no single-family homes that are adjacent to the property. So we think this is an incredibly cool site that's conducive to adding density and continuing to solve Madison's housing crisis. Importantly, there involves no displacement of any naturally occurring affordable housing or tenants. We originally built this project around Elementary and in conjunction with Elementary, who we have a phenomenal relationship with. Unfortunately, during the development process, they found a new home they liked better, but we did absolutely everything in our power to keep them here. Unfortunately, they'll still be on the east side, so we'll still be in there getting sandwiches quite often. Lastly, we're really excited to add amenities to Willie Street and conversely bring people to the neighborhood that want to live, work, and play on Willie Street and shop at Willie Street Co-op and go to all the places we love along Willie Street. This is not a highly amenitized building that's meant to compete with student housing developments or anything crazy downtown. We really want to build livable housing for people that want to join our vibrant neighborhood. So we've had great meetings with the neighborhood, great meetings with the Alder and the Preservation and Development Committee, who just last Monday voted overwhelmingly to support our project. And we're honored to be a part of this neighborhood and to hopefully continue to add some vitality to it. So with that, I'll transition over to Ryan on the EUA team. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Hopefully you can hear me okay.
You can.
All right, great. So I just wanted to add a couple of comments additional comments from what Dan had said. We can go to the next slide, please. I think there should be a thing. This is just the slide identifying the area. You can go to the next one. So we're going to zoom through these pretty quick. This slide is just showing the massing of what we're providing versus, as Lisa had mentioned, there's other taller buildings in this area to show that we are within the fabric of the neighborhood. Next slide, please. This site plan is just showing a couple things. One, all the setbacks are either met or exceeded that are required. What we are doing in addition to what would be required is we are adding some off-street parking, which is not required in a TOD, but we are adding those 4 additional stalls for the commercial space just to the north. And that the existing curb cut would remain in its approximate location, so there wouldn't be any additional disturbance on the access to the site. Next slide, please. This slide we're showing that we're trying to maximize the activity on Brearley Street. You'll notice the commercial space oriented so we can maximize that exposure of the retail or the commercial space facing onto Brearley, and that space does have access not only to Brearley but has a connection to the north to the bike trail. And also, in addition to that, we're providing increasing that the activity level and the maximum visibility of the site or the presence of the building on the street by adding the residential lobby and a sitting area to further provide that activity from the street along Brearley. Next slide. You'll see here in the lower level parking, just a couple of notes here. You'll notice that we do have all of the EV charging stations and all the bike parking. It is the majority of it, except there's 12 short-term stalls outside, but all the bike parking is protected inside the building in a tempered space. Next slide, please. As you see this on this slide, on the south along facing Williamson Street, we are set back, as Lisa had mentioned, and then also the massing is broken down to the north, facing the bike trail and the park just to the east and to the north. So to maximize some views, maximize the availability to light with the residents in the residence. And with that setback, we are showing that we are adding some greenery to further add some amenities to the building. Next slide, please. This is our typical floor plan. I don't think we need to dwell on this one. Next slide, please. What we're doing on the 4th floor to help break down the building, and it was per the staff report, it's per the direction that we got from the DAT meeting, which is to add some additional setbacks in the building along Brearley Street, which we did accommodate on the building along Brearley Street. And the residential, so we are providing a mix of units, 1s, 2s, and studios, which was a result of a market study that was performed by the developer. Next slide, please. This slide is showing how much the kind of the grayish greenish color. It's green, but I'm sorry that it's not showing up there quite correctly. But that is showing the extent of green roofing that we are proposing for the building, trying to maximize that and maximize the amount or the amount of green roofing on the project to minimize any stormwater runoff to the site. And as we get to the exteriors of the building, on the next slide, showing graphically how we are trying to break down the building from a massing perspective with high quality materials. We're using brick, we're using cement siding, cement plank siding, trying to emphasize the use of the base middle top concept, where we are breaking down the building in vertically as well as horizontally. You'll notice on the right in the middle, right by the sign, right by where the parking is, there's an opening that those 4 public stalls they're exterior but covered, and to maximize the ability and the security of that parking to function as best we can, we open that up, but also provided some screening so to minimize any impacts by cars within the space.
Brian, just so you know, you got a little more than a minute left.
All right. And then we just go to the next slide. So just the last slide here, just so we're aware that there is a large amount of large mature trees along the northern part of the site. Those are not, I should say that they're on the adjacent site in the right of way. Those trees are not meant to be impacted at all. This rendering just shows them minimized so we can maximize the view of the building. So Dan, I don't know if you want to go back over to Dan Schwartz.
Yep.
Go ahead,
Yes.
Dan.
Yep. Thank you for your consideration. We're really excited about this building. As Ryan said, we don't anticipate any impact on any of the vegetation in the city right away. This project is really built around bringing density to the neighborhood, solving Madison's housing crisis, and accentuating the bike path, and really accentuating the transitability, walkability, and bikeability, of the site. So thank you for giving us this time and this opportunity to continue to serve our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there questions from the commissioners for any of our, actually, Megan, do you want to read the other registrants? Thank you.
Yeah, we can continue. I'll just briefly note that from the applicant team, we also have Jonathan Lilly available to answer questions after we hear from other speakers. We'll move on next to Linda Leonards, who has registered in opposition and wishing to speak.
Great.
Linda will have 3.
I think you're unmuted now.
Hello.
Linda. Hello.
Hi. This building is just too big. Plus, it would be the tallest in the neighborhood. There are 3 other tall buildings along the bike path. Those buildings are only 5 stories and have a height ranging from 55 to 59 feet. This proposal is 6 stories with a building height of 74.5 feet to the top of the building, which is 31% taller than the average height of those 3 existing buildings. Those 3 buildings are in an area designated for community mixed use, and the comp plan provides for height up to 6 stories. This proposal is in an area designated for neighborhood mixed use, and the comp plan provides for a height of up to 4 stories. In 2018, the Plan Commission intentionally downgraded the intensity of this half block to neighborhood mixed use. The difference between community and neighborhood mixed use needs to mean something, otherwise there's not any point in distinguishing these land use categories. I reviewed Legistar to see where else a 6-story building has been approved in TSS during the last 4 years. There are 5. 1 is in a community use area, 2 are in regional, and 2 are in high residential. There has not been a 6-story building approved in a neighborhood mixed-use designation. And the building facing Williamson is just dreary. On page 23 of the plans, you will see 6 repetitive tan segments interspersed with partially set-in balconies, 239 feet in length without any interest. The side facing Williamson seems to have been treated as the back building, but far more people will see the side of the building than the bike path side. The buildings along Williamson are 1-story flat roofed and a 2-story house. Nothing blocking the view of the top 3 or 4 stories. And you could compare this to something like 408 East Washington, which also towers over the neighboring buildings. The back of that building was designed with as much care as the front of the building. In my comment letter, I spoke to the potential of the bike path to be used as a fire lane. Although that does not appear to be the case, the fire plans are not yet approved. Should you approve this conditional use, please add a condition of approval requiring the applicant to return to Plan Commission for approval of a major alteration should the bike path be potentially used. Please also consider the conditions I listed at the end of my comment letter. Historically, the bike path has been treated as an area where dog waste does not need to be picked up, and some developers have, in the past, treated the public right-of-way as private property. The trees that are in the right-of-way do not appear to be deemed street trees, nor has a forestry report been submitted, and thus they do not have any protection from construction. And so a condition addressing that would be very helpful also, so that the same things that apply to street trees would apply to these trees. Thank you.
Thanks, Linda. All right. Megan, are there other registrants?
Yes. Sorry, I was struggling to find my mute button. Our next speaker is Pilar Gomez Ibanez, who's registered in opposition and wishing to speak.
Hi, thank you. Can you hear me?
We can. Thank you.
Thanks for the opportunity to speak. And I will agree with the previous speaker that I think that the building is too big. I really do support adding housing to the neighborhood, and this is a really good spot for it. This is a perfect place to put in another building. But what I don't support is the 6-story height in the current plan. The build plan, the build to plan, and the comp plan both have this 4-story limit, as has already been discussed. And those plans gave really careful thought to how to increase density in context-appropriate ways. So I hope that the Plan Commission won't ignore them and will really think about the reasons why those were put at a lower height. When you look at the building in the drawings and when you go to the site and kind of imagine the building there, it is really extremely oversized in comparison to everything else on the block. And it's much, much bigger than things that are this far east on Willie Street. The buildings that are further to the west step up as it goes up towards the end of Williamson Street, and they've always had larger commercial buildings on the west side of Williamson. So I'm hoping that we won't have much larger buildings coming down as Williamson goes east. The second thing I wanted to talk about quickly was the trees, and I'm really glad to hear again from the developers tonight that they're not planning on doing anything that will affect the trees in the public right-of-way. They also said this at the neighborhood P&D meeting, so I'm glad to hear that. That's one of my main concerns, because the public land that runs alongside the bike path there is actually just a really great wildlife corridor. It's got beautiful public gardens, a lot of native plants and trees, and it supports a lot of wildlife. There is, in particular, a very large cottonwood tree that's kind of a landmark standing on the corner of Brearley and the bike path, and that, I believe, is in the public land. So I would like to ask, just to make sure that all of that stays protected the way they are saying it will, that the Plan Commission could make the preservation of those trees on public land as a condition of approval for the project. I feel like if it's in writing, it'll be a lot more liable to happen the way it's supposed to. The second thing I'd like to ask the Plan Commission to consider is that they ensure that construction staging will not take place on that public land. Apparently, the construction staging is supposed to take place all on the land owned by the developer, and if that could be made a condition of approval as well, I think that will help to safeguard that land.
Pilar, that's your time. I appreciate you coming out tonight and your comments. Thank you.
Okay, the next registrant is Mike Tarby, registered in support and wishing to speak.
Thanks. All right, Mike.
Can you hear me all right?
We can hear you. Yes.
Okay, fantastic. So I would just like to echo my neighbor's statements about the appropriateness of this site for increased density, for more housing units in the area. I'm actually quite literally within a stone's throw of the proposed development, and I would really appreciate having some more neighbors in the area. I'm pretty new. However, I would like to disagree with the sentiment that this height is inappropriate. I recognize the consideration of the comprehensive plan and other plans and their intentionality with the height restriction of the area, though I'd also like to raise the fact that the population projections of Madison have already been exceeded. So clearly we're seeing a lot of growth across the city, and especially desirability here on the east side of the Isthmus. Folks living, working, playing in the area, and we have a severe housing unit shortage that I think we're all very conscious of. And I understand the concerns about height and shade along the bike path and things like that. I would like to encourage, as this area does continue to grow, rather than trying to limit this project, which will add much needed units to the area, I would definitely like to see the buildings along Williamson Street kind of grow to meet the growing density of the area. I understand that they're currently single story and that they wouldn't block the view of the 5th or 6th stories of the proposed development. However, I don't think that's a problem with the proposal with this new project. I'd rather see the credit union building get a little taller. I would just like to kind of call out if our priorities are more so just sticking to the plans for the sake of sticking to plans, or if our priorities are addressing a badly needed housing deficiency in the area, especially providing folks with access to the bike path, access to the bus rapid transit route, and walkability to many downtown jobs and schools in the area as well. I think this is a very valuable proposal, and I'd love to see it approved. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Mike. Thank you for coming out.
Okay, so we also have, apologies, I neglected to say earlier, John Powers is available to answer questions representing Sarah Investment Real Estate. We also have Stephen Olson from District 6, registered in opposition and available to answer questions. There are other speakers that have registered their support or opposition but are not wishing to speak that will be included in the record.
Thanks, Megan. All right. Are there questions from the commissioners for any of our registrants as part of our public hearing? Commissioner Heck.
Thank you. I'll ask a couple of questions of the development team. I'm curious about how, what you've heard about the trees. I mean, we've read that all the trees in the right of way will be protected. Isn't that what you said, Ryan? Maybe that's for you.
All right, you guys can hear me okay? Oh,
Yes.
Sorry about that. Gosh dang it. I can jump in. All right, there we go. So the larger mature trees that are along the northern property line are all on the property just to the north of us. There will be some, because of the canopy of the trees do overhang the property, there will be some trimming of those trees, but there isn't any intent to remove those trees based on the development that we're proposing.
Thanks, Ryan. And also, I mean, your implication is that there are some smaller trees that may be on the property line or on your side of the property line. Is there any disagreement about which trees are on which side of the line, or are some straddling the line, do you think?
There are the majority of the trees there are on that northern property line, or I should say on the northern property, the right of way, East Wilson Street, right away. There are a few trees on what would be the northwestern portion of our site that would be impacted, but the majority of the trees would not be. And once again, the ones that are not on our property would not be impacted by our proposed development.
Okay, I think you're answering my question. Thank you. Just another item. If there were a condition of approval placed on this application that there would not be any construction materials or traffic allowed in the right of way along the bike path, would that be problematic for you as far as you know?
No.
I can
Go ahead.
I can jump in on that. No, that shouldn't be problematic for us at all. We're happy to
Okay. All right. Thanks. And then we may end up discussing a little bit about the fire lane, even though from what I understand, you've worked with the fire department and staff on a solution to your fire lane requirements. Can you describe that a little bit? How you're going to meet the requirements for fire access?
Yep, I'll let the EUA team take this on our behalf.
Great.
Sorry. No, I got it. So we have the street, Brearley Street, which would serve as our main access from a fire standpoint. And I know that one of the things that one of the comments from the staff report did mention compliance with the fire all the fire code items, and we definitely will be following up with the fire department just to make sure that we do have everything in place.
Okay, so you're still working on that, it sounds like.
When we did meet with the DAT meeting, the fire department was on that call, and and I should say the comments that they had in that meeting we did address, but we definitely would want just to make sure that everything is satisfied and meet with them just as a final time to make sure that we have all the items in place for compliance.
Okay, and you've assured yourselves that you don't need to involve the bike path or right-of-way in the rear of the building to achieve compliance with those requirements, right?
Yes, that is what we're trying to verify, but yes, that is the assumption.
Okay, great. And then one last question. You've heard the concerns from some neighbors about the height of this building. If this redevelopment were to be limited to 5 stories like the other projects nearby that have exceeded the 4-story limit, what would the implications be for your redevelopment? And would you need a bigger footprint, or what would you say to that?
Yeah, the implication of lower housing, less housing overall, which is what lower height does, is just you need higher rents to make the project pencil, just for local investors that are going to be partnering with us on this. And so the net effect for us is that it makes it harder to make the rents work for the neighborhood. And we still, obviously, it's not something that we would still try to problem solve to make the development work. But we've also been meeting with the TIF coordinator here with the city, and we're going to try to go about this project without TIF support from the city. And so that would become additionally problematic if you limited if the height was limited as well. So the net effect of less housing in the area is just you need higher rental income to make the project work.
So you're hinting maybe that that getting TIF assistance would in some ways be the price for not having a 6th floor, and obviously would delay the project, I guess.
Yes, it's just inputs and outputs in terms of, less rental income and more cost for public improvement has just a negative effect on the rental rate we're able to offer to make the development viable.
Mm-hmm. And so you did have some conversations with staff about that, about TIF?
We did. We're working through that. We have another meeting Thursday with Dan Rolfs and Joe Gramacki, but we understand that preliminarily this site was not eligible.
Because of the distance from the TIF district?
We were not given reasons in the email we received. We're meeting on Thursday to better understand why this site is not eligible.
Okay, and so you were pursuing it even with a 6-story version?
Correct.
Okay, thanks. Those are my questions.
Thanks, Commissioner Heck. Alder Uguier.
Thank you, Chair. And Commissioner Heck has asked and gotten answers for most of the questions I had, which were primarily dealing with the fire lane. But just to, and I think this is for Ryan Stouty, just to confirm that at least tentatively right now, fire access will not involve using the bike path. Is that correct? Ryan?
Sorry, it just takes me a couple minutes to get to turn all the mutes on and microphones off, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, that is our intention.
Okay, and one more question. I assume there were some neighborhood meetings. Were there any adjustments to the plans as a result of neighborhood comments?
We went to the DAT meeting. Excuse me, looks like there we go. We went to DAT with the city early on and did make significant adjustments to the building as a result of that. In addition, we had meetings early on with the Alder and made significant adjustments to the building as a result of that. We just had, and additionally, we had one neighborhood meeting 4 or 5 weeks ago. And we continually refined the building as a result of that. We did just have a DAT meeting last Monday, which of course was past the submittal deadline for this, so that there wasn't any changes as a result of that meeting. But of course, they were overwhelmingly in support of it, and there was no changes as a condition of the approval other than consideration of trees in the right of way, which is not a part of our property.
Neighborhood, not the
Neighborhood meeting, excuse me. I'm sorry, neighborhood meeting. My team's correcting me here. Pardon me, Alder.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Thank you, Alder.
Thanks, Alder Rummel.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I have a question for Dan or the team. We had spoken about the number of units and whether you would consider having some more micro units. And you said you would consider it, but you wanted to hear what Plan Commission thought. Also, when I was first checking out, like comparing your proposal with the one that you're like a background partner with Threshold on Willie Street, that's a 5-story building and it had more units than you're proposing in your 6-story building. And that kind of caught my attention. And part of their goal is to do smaller micro units as a way to get to a more affordable price point. And I'd asked you if you'd consider that, as I've been pushing you to look at affordable housing options, and you have, so I appreciate that. But anyway, can you just talk some more about whether adding micro units might offset some of the things you just recently said to Commissioner Heck about what a 5-story building would do?
Absolutely. Thank you, Alder. Yeah, the project on the old Struck and Irwin site is a considerably larger lot, and it's in a historic district. Conversely, this is a much smaller lot, so that's part of the reason the density is so significantly different, despite this height discrepancy between our project and the Struck and Irwin project. With respect to affordability, we did look into the WIDA program, which this site is unfortunately not eligible for. We also would be more than happy to accommodate micro units as a condition to this approval. We want to be part of making sure there's the folks that want to live on Willie Street can be there.
Thank you.
But are there any other questions for the registrants? Commissioner Heck.
Thanks. I'm just have a follow-up. I apologize for hogging a lot of the time. Dan, I'm thinking some more about the TIF issue, and you said you're having another meeting, and is your anticipation that at that meeting you'll be given an explanation why TIF probably wouldn't work for your project? Is that what's going on? As far as you know?
Exactly right. Yep. We're just looking for an explanation in order to make the project more viable. We want to understand what our options are in order to make the project a reality.
Okay, because I was thinking, well, maybe there really is a way for you to get some TIF, and then you could include some affordable housing if that were to transpire. But it sounds like that's probably not a possibility. So thanks for answering that.
Thanks. All right. Other questions? All right, seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and then ask if the commissioners have questions for staff. Commissioner Heck.
Thank you. Lisa, do you think it's necessary to add a condition related to utilizing adjacent right-of-way during the construction process, or is that kind of standard that doesn't happen without permission?
Yeah, I mean, I know there are instances of right of way being closed for construction, but that goes through like a formal process. I think if you wanted to prohibit it, perhaps, I don't know if that's under the Plan Commission's purview. Megan, do you have thoughts on that?
Well, I'm thinking to when we approved the usage of the park area at the top of State Street for the construction of the Historical Society Museum. And I can't remember, honestly, I think that Plan Commission actually did maybe approve the kind of staging process with that, but I honestly can't remember that 100%. But it could be that we could add a condition of approval that if they are going to utilize that right of way, that it could be considered an alteration that they need to come back to Plan Commission. But frankly, I think I'm comfortable with staff analyzing any such request. So I'm not going to suggest that at this point. Thanks. That was my question.
Yeah, thanks. The only thing I was going to add is just, kind of what is the interest from the Plan Commission's perspective in terms of why it would require an amendment that you would see. But I do think Lisa's right that we have processes to consider and then grant permits for public right-of-way occupation for construction projects.
Thanks. Alder Uguier.
Thank you. I am intrigued enough by Alder Rummel's suggestion of the benefits for some number of micro units and the apparent willingness of the developer that my question for staff, for Lisa, would be, can you suggest how we would construct a condition, either encouraging or allowing or requiring some number of micro units? How would we phrase that?
Sorry,
Megan,
Lisa, I know that was directed at you, but
no, go ahead.
Thanks for the question, Alder Uguier. I think in order to help frame how that condition may be worded, it may be helpful to understand if there's a particular outcome associated with that condition that the commission would be aiming to achieve. And what I mean by that is that specifically the consideration of having affordable or more affordable units within the project was something that I heard Alder Rummel mention. And if that's the interest, I may suggest it differently than if you have some other interest that you'd be hoping as an outcome.
No, I will just add to that, Megan, that no, my interest is on the affordability side. Okay. And the addition of some, and that would be, I think, the objective. And I'm sure since Alder Rummel has had some number of conversations on this, she might be able to add to that. But it was the affordability aspect that I found intriguing.
Alder Rummel.
Thank you, Uguier, Alder Uguier. I guess I would say that in my experience, what I tell developers, if they're trying to exceed what is expected, kind of what are you giving us? And if you're giving more affordable units, maybe not like the ones that we're typically thinking of through community development, but, a smaller size, a lesser price point, then that's something the neighborhood considers when they think it's taller than I like, but it's got affordable housing. So that's how I would help frame if you need help. Thank you.
Thank you.
I may suggest that if the commission is interested in this as a condition, that it be framed as a recommendation to explore modifications to the unit mix to include micro units to support the inclusion of more affordable price points within the project. I think it may be somewhat difficult to prescribe in more detail what those should be or how many of those should be. But understanding that if this condition were included and met, it may result in a plan alteration that could either be reviewed in the future by staff or, depending on the level of change, by the Plan Commission in the future. But I would recommend it as an encourage the exploration.
Thanks. Alderfield.
Thank you, Chair. On this topic of a condition to explore micro units, Megan, you started to touch on this at the end of your comment there, but practically speaking, my question is, would, practically speaking, staff interpret such a condition to mean that a alteration of the unit mix in this direction would be more likely to be a minor alt with an easier approval process instead of a major alteration? Or how would such a condition change this project's path to building permits?
It's a great question. And I will admit, and I'm happy to have Lisa jump in at any point if she would like, because I have just a few experiences with minor alterations. I think the line between a minor and a major alteration in regards to unit mix is a to be determined kind of situation. I think if the result was a change in a few units here or there, one way or another, we may be able to proceed with that as a minor alteration. If it resulted in a major change to the overall number of the units or some other sort of impact to the project overall, it may be considered a major alteration. So I think it just depends on how the applicants are able to, what they're able to come up with in terms of a change.
Quick follow-up to that. Would the amendment alter the threshold that staff would use to determine if something becomes a major alteration? Or would that's the condition have an impact on that?
I would say maybe only to the extent that the condition is that specific.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Sanders.
Thank you, Chair. I was wondering if staff happens to know what the current unit mix is in the proposal, because as I was looking through the floor plans, it seems like there's already quite a lot of studios represented and very few 2-bedrooms. So I'm just wondering if staff has an answer to the current mix, or if we would entertain having the developers answer that question.
There is on page 17 of the plans, up in the top right corner of one of the floor plans, there's a very small chart. It looks like the unit matrix includes 22% studio, 68% 1-bedroom, and 10% 2-bedroom.
Thank you for pointing it out. I did not see it because it is so small, but I have found it now. Thank you.
Great.
Thanks, Commissioner Heck.
Thank you. If we were to place such a condition as Megan suggested, some version of that, there are repercussions of doing that with respect to the building. For instance, parking ratios would change if it was a substantial change, or whatever that might mean, whatever that threshold might be. And I understand why it's subjective, that threshold. But I guess I'm nervous about such a strict version of such conditions because of those repercussions. Can you think of anything else that would change other than, I guess, bike parking requirements and parking? There aren't parking requirements, but it would change the parking ratio. But bike stall requirements would change. Is there anything else that you can think of?
That's right. I mean, the other piece that's tied to the transportation element is that this project is subject to a TDM plan. So that could change depending on how extensive the change is. There could be changes to the requirements for the TDM program. And then I think ultimately, depending on the extent of change, there could be changes to the building layout. I'm thinking specifically just about how all of the units, the combinations of the units fit together kind of within the shell of the building. Those could start to prompt other changes to the building's massing and or things like windows, et cetera.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Commissioner McCahill.
Thanks. I just wanted to clarify one thing. I noticed on the agenda item, it seems to suggest that this is not meeting the TOD requirement for 50% non-residential frontage, but it didn't look like that in the plan, and I didn't see anything in the staff report. Could you just explain that?
Lisa, are you familiar with this detail? Otherwise, I'll need just 1 second to get to that point.
Yeah, I don't know if I am either. Is it in the report?
It's only in the agenda, so sorry I didn't flag it sooner.
Yeah, sorry, I did not catch that as we were kind of preparing for this evening's meeting.
Yeah, I likewise don't see that articulated in the staff report.
That's fine if, I mean, from the plans, it looks like it meets that, so I don't know where that came from.
This is an area where if you are interested, perhaps you could reopen the hearing and invite someone from the applicant team to speak to that detail if you'd like.
Yeah, I think it would be good to have that clarified because I mean, I do see it in the agenda. If we could briefly reopen the hearing and ask a member of the development team just to confirm maybe whether that 50% non-residential ground floor frontage condition is met. Ryan, I don't know if you're the right person, Ryan or Dan, whoever. Yeah, there you go.
Sorry. So I can answer that question. So when we were talking with staff, we did have this question come up. And when we looked at that elevation along Burley Street about the 50% non-residential, the clarification was the parking entry classified as non-residential in addition to the commercial space that we're providing, which is roughly 50% of that. So if you combine the parking entry plus the commercial space, we're well over the 50%.
Okay. Yeah, I think if we're comfortable with the applicant's assertion that they don't require that conditional use, then we could not take an action on it. And I think then, if it comes through during review that it is triggered, they would, have to come back for that. But looking at the plans, I agree.
Thanks, Lisa. So that would not be included as a specific conditional use. Sounds like, all right, I would.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think that's appropriate.
Okay. I would close the hearing then and then ask if Commissioner McCahill has any follow-up questions for staff or if there are any other staff questions. All right. If we've had our questions answered, would anyone like to make a motion? And we'd start with item 4, which is the consideration of a demolition permit to demolish a multi-tenant commercial building at 306 South Brearley Street in District 6. Would anyone like to make a motion on this item? Commissioner Heck.
Thank you. I'll move that we approve the demolition permit to demolish a multi-tenant commercial building at 306 South Brearley Street, and that the standards for the demolition permit are met.
Thank you. Is there a second to Commissioner Heck's motion? Alder Field, thank you. Any discussion on the motion to approve the demolition permit? All right, seeing none, is there any objection to unanimous consent for this item, which is Legistar 85636? All right, seeing none, we will record that as unanimously approved. And now we move to item 5, which is Legistar 85637, which is the conditional use for this project. Alder Yeager.
Thank you. And let me pull some things up here so that I can do this properly. Move that finding that the standards for conditional use are met, that we approve the requested conditional uses for the proposed building, including the conditions listed by the staff for 306 South Brearley Street, with the addition of an additional condition, which I will try to read out here, and certainly will accept friendly adjustments. The condition is a recommendation to explore variations to the unit mix to include some number of micro units with the objective of improving the overall affordability.
Thank you, Alder Yeager. Is there a second to Alder Yeager's motion? Alder Field. Thank you. Any other? I won't ask for comments on the motion. I'll ask for discussion on the motion. Commissioner Heck.
Thanks. I wondered if Alder Yeager included subject to all the conditions in the staff report like we usually do. I didn't know if I heard that.
I think I heard it. Megan's
Okay.
not. So.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes.
Just
thank
checking.
You. Yes. Oh, that's important. Any other discussion on this motion? Any objection to unanimous approval? Oh, Lisa. Sorry, Lisa, do you have a comment before we record the vote?
Yeah, sorry to interrupt. I think I just would specify, and I think it's appropriate, Megan, that I think with this motion, that 50% conditional use for non-residential will technically be approved because they're all under one item, which I don't think is necessarily an issue, but I just wanted to clarify since I previously said the opposite. So,
yeah, I think because it's there, it will be approved, although we are not, I think collectively we believe it's meeting the requirement, but if for some reason it's not, that would be approved. Thank you, Lisa.
Yep. Is that, Alder Yeager, is that your understanding on the motion, and is that the motion we want to vote on?
That is my understanding. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Appreciate that clarification. Are there any other discussion items on the motion? And seeing none, is there any objection to unanimous approval for Alder Yeager's motion on this item? All right, seeing none, we'll record that as approved. And we'll move to item 6, which is Legistar 85653, approving the certified survey map of the property owned by Brearley Street Property Group LLC, located at 306 South Brearley Street in District 6. Is there a motion on this item? Commissioner Heck.
Thank you. I'll move that we recommend approval of the certified survey map of the property. Oh, I'm on the wrong agenda item, sorry. Certified survey map of property owned by Brearley Street Property Group, LLC, located at 306 South Brearley, along with any conditions that may be in the staff recommendations.
Thank you. Alderfield, is that a second? Thank you. Any discussion on this item? Seeing none, is there any objection to unanimous approval for this item as moved and seconded? Thank you. We'll record that item as unanimously approved as well. And we will move to the next group of agenda items, items 7, 8, and 9. And we will start with the staff presentation, also from Lisa.
Okay, thank you. So before the commission now are 3 applications related to the redevelopment of 423 through 427 West Mifflin Street. The applicant is proposing to demolish 3 buildings or 3 residential buildings to construct a 4-story, 40-unit apartment building on 1 lot. Again, a detailed discussion and recommendations for each application is in the staff report, and I'll be focusing on the demolition request. As I said, the applicant is requesting to demolish 3 buildings. Staff believe that the demolition standards can be found met for the buildings at 423 and 425 West Mifflin Street. For the building at 427 West Mifflin Street, as it relates to approval standard 4, the Landmarks Commission found that the building has historic value as the work of noted Madison architect Ferdinand Cronenberg, and as an intact example of the English Revival style missing middle housing in 1920s Madison. Per standard 4, the Plan Commission should consider the report from the Landmarks Commission, and also for properties determined by the Landmarks Commission to have any historic value or significance, the Plan Commission may consider how demolition and redevelopment of the property relates to the implementation of the city's adopted plans. And this is the standard 4 was amended this year to include that language specifically. And staff believe the proposed development is generally consistent with the adopted plan recommendations. In this case, if the Plan Commission can find the demolition approval standards met, then staff recommend the Plan Commission approve the demolition request for 427 West Mifflin Street. And if the Plan Commission cannot find the approval standards met, then the related applications cannot move forward as proposed. And based on the findings of the Plan Commission, the 3 applications should either be referred so that the materials can be revised or recommended to place on file without prejudice. Thanks.
Thanks, Lisa. We do have registrants for this item as well. So I will open the public hearing, and Megan, if you could manage the registrants.
Okay, we will start with Kevin Burrow from Kenothi and Bruce Architects representing the project.
All right, Kevin, I think you're unmuted.
All right, good evening. This is Kevin Burrow with Kenothi and Bruce Architects. This is not our first slide of the presentation. We could jump to the beginning. Just to give context, this site is located in the heart of the 400 block of West Mifflin Street, as you can see highlighted in yellow there, immediately to the northwest or northeast of the Mifflinder Apartments, which is also owned by Madison Development Corp., who currently owns these 3 properties as well. So we're proposing the redevelopment of these 3 rental properties to provide much needed additional housing in the heart of Madison in a key area for redevelopment. If you go to the next slide, please. The context photos here show the Mifflinder apartment building, which was constructed a number of years ago, in the foreground there in items A and B. And then items C, D, and E are the existing properties, the small rental homes that we're requesting permission to raise for the redevelopment. You go to the next slide, please. Here you can see the overall site plan overlaid on what's going to be the development surrounding our property. That was on the agenda for tonight, but unfortunately was referred to the December 2nd meeting. But I just wanted to show it in context because one key element that we've been coordinating with adjacent developers is this through block pedestrian connection. So we've located our building appropriately such to coincide with where they're placing their building so that the northern, so to speak, leg of this pedestrian connection can be well enhanced on both properties. Next slide, please. You can see our site plan layout here where we've got our main access drive off of West Mifflin Street coming into a small amount of surface parking and then ramping down to the rear of the site to the underground parking underneath this building. This is a 40-unit building, and we are able to get 19 stalls underground and 6 stalls on the surface. We've located all of our bike parking and main entry in the front corner of the building, directly at the entry drive along West Mifflin Street. Each of the units do have balconies, and the 2 units that front on West Mifflin Street have a large porch element, as is required for the Mifflandia plan. Can you go to the next slide, please? Here you can see the floor plans where we've got the basement level shown in the upper corner, and then it's a mixture of studios, 1 to 2 bedroom apartments scattered throughout the building. And we are utilizing a step back element on the 4th floor, which is actually not required. Anything above 4 stories requires a step back. But we chose to introduce it to stay in context and character to the Mifflandia plan and to align with the Mifflander next door. And we will utilize the green roof, the step back roof areas for green roofs as well. Go to the next slide, please. We've got the elevations here where we're using high quality materials of masonry and composite siding, and the masonry does carry around all sides of the building to coincide with that pedestrian pass-through. If you go to the next slide, please. Here's the rear elevation, which has a dominant amount of masonry. Next slide, please. You can see the material palettes here. Again, high quality masonry and composite sidings. And then we'll quickly go through the renderings. Next couple slides here, where you can see the perspective view along the front with the Mifflander immediately to the right. And you can see how the step back helps reduce the scale of the building. Next slide, please. Here's the view between the 2 buildings with the shared drive coming through. And you can see the large porch on the new proposed building immediately to the left.
Kevin, if you could wrap up, that's we're getting to time.
Sure, there's only 2 more slides.
Okay.
Perspective view of the rear, you can see the ramp coming down to the underground. And then you can go to the next slide. This is where the opportunity where that pedestrian pass-through will occur with the property to the north of us, and we will be coordinating our landscape design with them should that project move forward on a similar time frame.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you.
Okay, also registered available to answer questions with the applicant team is Cashton Lockenberg, Abby Wallhouse, Lori Heineman, and Peter Fortledge. We also have Peter Talia registered in opposition and wishing to speak.
Hello?
Hello, we can hear you.
Okay, hi. Since learning of the application for a demolition permit for 427 West Mifflin this summer, I have spent many hours researching and estimating the costs and feasibility of relocating the house to a buildable lot next to a house I own on Clark Court by Birdingham Park, and 1 block from my home where I've lived and raised my kids since 2001. I have secured bids from 2 different house movers. I've had multiple discussions with Alder Verveer, a local developer, Brandon Cook, who also moved buildings and helped me with many cost estimates, Lisa McNabula in planning, and Kyle Bunau in building inspection. I spent many hours working with the house movers and MG&E on the specific route and potential costs for moving power lines. I am making every effort to save costs by doing as much of this work as possible myself. I tried to work with MDC to find some creative ways to lower costs, such as adding the relocation of this house to their contract with their architect. It is very difficult to build houses in Madison, and even more difficult without an experienced architect. I have evaluated the potential cost savings if I converted the house from 4 units to 2 so that I could avoid having to meet the commercial building code requirements. And that would also help me avoid having to install sprinklers. Unfortunately, any savings that I would get by not having to install those sprinklers and other commercial code requirements would be offset by the additional work I would need to do to modify the house to make it 2 units. Despite many discussions with MDC, We're still at an impasse, and I am having trouble making this work economically. They have tried to work with me, but I am a little bit disappointed that it doesn't seem like we have an agreement that I can afford. The bottom line is, they're not willing to contribute any actual funds more than the comparable demolition that this would require. And so that to me is a little bit of a problem. I included some pictures of the house since the staff report does not detail any building deficiencies. Right now, you can see that there is a roof right now there that is falling apart. You can see there's some shadows there, but we've got curled shingles. In addition, you can also see, if we can move down a little bit, please, there are bricks falling apart, and some of the stonework is falling apart. It's pretty bad. I'm a little bit upset that this house was allowed to get this bad. The building mover contractor said that they typically can move houses like this with no additional brick damage or roof damage, but this house is not in that type of condition, and it will require immediate tuck pointing and a new roof as it is after it is relocated.
Peter, you are at time if you could just wrap up.
Yep. I am concerned that we have a demolition permit that is not it's a demolition by neglect, and it sets a little bit of a poor example, but I would like to still try to make it work. And I want to emphasize that my proposal and the modest contribution I've asked from MDC would allow me to add 4 units of infill development to a buildable lot in my neighborhood with many houses of similar size and age. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter.
Okay, next we have Tom Wilson, registered neither support nor oppose and wishing to speak.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can. Go ahead.
Yeah, so my name is Tom Wilson. I'm a neighbor of Mr. Taglia with property adjacent to the vacant lot that he hopes to relocate the Cronenberg Metz house. I've been in front of this commission several times in the past advocating in favor of housing, particularly high density and infill development. And when there's a conflict between green space, historic resources, and large trees, I tend to favor the development because we need more housing, and there's often a bigger picture overlooked by focusing too much on one reason not to do something. The project before you tonight is an unusual opportunity to increase density at the primary site, infill a vacant lot at another site, and preserve a historic structure. You've all likely had to make choices between housing, which we need, and historic preservation, which we want, and this project allows us to do both. Mr. Taglia has actively engaged neighbors over the past months about the potential timeline and impacts of this project and the move, and he has broad neighborhood support and buy-in. The Cronenberg Metz house would fit well into our neighborhood, which is a mix of single-family homes and 2, 3, and 4-unit structures, and many of us are excited to see this happen. This project is a win all around, but it's important for everyone to do their part to make it happen if we think that it's important. And so I would hope that you would vote to approve the demolition permit with the condition that the Cronenberg Metz house be moved. I believe that Mr. Taglia is hoping for some financial assistance by the developer to make the house, to move the house. And given the risk and investment he is taking on, I think this seems reasonable to preserve this historic resource while increasing housing, and certainly not unusual in my understanding for this body to place historic preservation conditions on developments. But overall, I think this is a very good project. I was really happy to see the through block pedestrian connection, that those kinds of things are excellent. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Tom. Thanks for coming out.
Okay, and the last registered speaker is Jared Pelsky, registered in opposition and wishing to speak.
Jared, your mic is off.
Yep, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. So my name is Jared Pelsky. I live on the end of West Main Street. The location of Pete's vacant lot is kind of adjacent in the backyard of my home. I previously held position of vice chair for the Triangle and Monona Bay Neighborhood Plan from 2017, 2019. I've been the president of the Monona Bay Neighborhood Association and a member for the 15 years that I've lived in the neighborhood. You know, when I was in college, I lived at 420 West Gorham, and it was a beautiful, historic, I don't know that it was technically historic or registered, but, you know, these architecturally interesting homes and beautiful homes that over the last 25 years seem to continue to go away as development takes place. I'm pro-development, but, you know, this home in particular has been on my path up and to the Capitol and back home, and I've just always thought that it was a kind of a beautiful home on the block along West Mifflin. I think the architectural character complements our neighborhood, you know, and certainly adds infill development within our neighborhood, which was part of our neighborhood plan. You know, I oppose demolition without a solid effort to relocate this home. And it sounds like there's efforts, but I think that there should be a condition on the proposal is that this home be relocated and saved. Thank you.
Thanks, Jared.
Okay, that is the end of our registrants wishing to speak. There are other registrants that have indicated support or opposition, but not wishing to speak, that will be included in the record.
Thanks, Megan. For our public hearing portion, are there any questions for our registrants from the commissioners? Commissioner Heck.
Thank you. I'd like to ask anyone from the development team about their thoughts about the future of the building in question, 427, and the possibility of moving it, and what their version of where they are in negotiations right now.
This is Kevin Burrow with Canothia Brews. I'll start and might need to hand this over to Lori Heineman with Medicine Development Corp. We are very supportive of having this structure relocated. We agree that repurposing it in a nearby block would be a win-win-win for the city in many regards. We have offered to cover the cost of what it would cost us to raise the building, to demolish it, and that value will be given to Peter for the relocation expenses. And my firm, Canothia Brews Architects, is willing to help support him in this venture as well by providing assistance and guidance through the process as part of the project. As far as any dollar values go, we cannot speak to that publicly or have hard numbers to work from, but we would like to help support as best as we can.
Thanks, Kevin. So you have hard numbers that you've given to Peter?
That's correct. This is Lori Heineman, Alderheck. So we are an affordable housing provider. We've been providing affordable housing in Madison since 1977 when we were created by the city. And when we create projects, we look to create them so that they can be affordable, and we get tax exemption on those units that are affordable. So the rents are fairly low, which makes these projects very, very hard to finance and get them into the ground. We put all of our own money into these projects, and we get financing for 80%. So there really aren't outside sources that we can tap into to add additional costs when the existing costs almost make it cost prohibitive. We are a permanent nonprofit affordable housing provider that would make this project a permanent affordable housing, just like we have right next door at our Mifflinder. And we believe that this project is consistent. I'm a big history buff. As I've had many conversations with Peter, I admire his passion for moving this. We'd love to see it moved. Whether or not we can afford to pay beyond the cost of raising it or environmental issues, which are typically what's paid for in a relocation of this nature, is very hard to say due to the fact that it's a very expensive project to build.
Thanks, Lori. And I'll be asking Peter this also, but do we know approximately what the gap is financially? So a ballpark figure?
Well, we got a ballpark figure from our contractor who recently raised 2 houses in our last project in Middleton, and that number we have shared with Peter, and Peter is asking for 30,000 above that number.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you, Lori. Thank you, Kevin.
Thanks, Commissioner Heck. Any other questions for our registrants? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. And I will ask if the commissioners have questions for staff.
I just wanted to make a point of clarification. I think Commissioner Heck indicated that he intended to ask a question of one of the other registrants. Is that true?
Yes, thank you. I didn't react quickly enough.
Nope. Then I would reopen the public hearing so that for that dialogue. Commissioner Heck, thank you. Thanks, Megan.
Yes, I just wanted to ask Peter if that checks out, with it, that's the conversation that you've had, and that's approximately what you feel the gap is.
Hi, Patrick. Thank you for the question. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So, we're at about $30,000 to $35,000 difference. And what I want to impress upon you is that I am taking on a ton of risk, and that the tuck pointing and roof alone are going to cost me far more than that $30,000. And so, again, I would just say it shouldn't have gotten to the point where we're arguing over $30,000, but I'm not a big developer. I want to bring this project into my neighborhood. It will bring incremental development into my neighborhood, as my neighbors spoke. And I'm frankly, we're close. And I would ask the Plan Commission to ask the applicant to meet me where I need to be. And where I need to be is also requiring an enormous amount of risk on my behalf.
Thanks, Peter. And does your that figure include any offer by Kanothi Bruce to provide some assistance?
Thank you. So what I asked for originally, and I have emails that characterize this, I asked for, can MDA add the relocation? They already have the design of the building. They already have a lot of work done in the neighborhood. And so, as I mentioned, I had talked to Brandon Cook, who hired KBA to do his move of that 4-story apartment earlier this summer that got a lot of press. And I asked him, how important is it to have an architect helping you? And so I asked MDA to add that to their contract with KBA because I thought that would save money. I'm a little guy. I'm trying to save everything I can. And I could spend a lot of time with you guys going through how much I'm trying to save and make this work. It's very difficult to make it work. So,
okay, thanks.
Yep.
Thanks, Peter.
Yeah, you might overwhelm us with details. Chair, I guess I have a follow-up question, probably for Lori Heineman. I'm not sure. I'm interested in knowing what their timetable is for demolition, and if Plan Commission were interested in conditionally approving the demolition of 427 with, a 2-month delay to try to work out this problem or something, what would the impact of that be, and what's your schedule for demolition?
Thank you for asking, Alder Heck. I would probably refer the timeline, specific timeline, to Kevin Burrow of Canothy Bruce, but I can tell you we would like to be breaking ground no later than August of 2025. And of course, everything that, for the timeline that Canothy Bruce puts into place right now is really very, very important that we meet these deadlines now to be able to get to that point. And if you don't start in August and complete in the summer, it is very difficult to rent these things up in the winter and in the fall. And that's
Right,
really important to us. We can't sustain having several months without renters in our properties.
Thank you. Kevin?
Yeah, I would agree. We are on a timetable right now where we do want to get our approvals in hand yet this year, such that we can work through the site plan verification approval process for the project, such that all approvals are in hand, construction documents are complete by early summer of next year. So with that said, there is plenty of time to work out the final details for the relocation of this home, because there's plenty of calendar months in advance of that to allow that to happen.
So you're saying that demolition might not be until later in the spring, that ball might not get rolling till later in the spring or early summer?
Correct. It would be summer at the earliest. The property is currently rented out.
Oh, okay. And the lease is until the end of the semester or August?
Lori or Cashton, could you?
Yeah, Cashton, if you could unmute Cashton. Cashton can answer that question.
Yes, can you guys hear me?
We can.
Perfect. Yeah, so all of the leases end. We have a couple units that wanted to end their leases early because they graduate in the summer. So they are looking to end their leases in May. And then we had a couple other residents, two in which are looking to just move to potentially the Mifflander right next door. Those leases end July 31st. So most of those residents in those three current homes are students. And like I said, about half were graduating already. So we work with them to get the units emptied, and we'll just leave them vacant for 2 months before we potentially start the project.
Okay, good information. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions or before we reclose the public hearing? All right, I will close the public hearing again and open up an opportunity for questions for staff from the commission. Commissioner Heck.
Thank you. I'm looking for suggestions from staff about approving this demolition with a condition that the applicant work with the entity that's interested in moving this house, but I'm in some ways I'm wondering if it's necessary, because if they're not going to demolish it until July or August, the house will have occupants and their negotiations can continue to see if they can reach an agreement. It really seems like it might be more of a condition that says the applicant should continue to explore the option of moving. Can you think of a stronger language that might be appropriate?
We did look into instances where Plan Commission has added conditions related to relocation. So one example was from the 700 block of East Johnson Street, which was approved now a few years ago. But so that recommendation or that condition was that the developer shall attempt to relocate the structures currently at 731 East Johnson Street to other lots within the neighborhood. I don't know if that's really any stronger than what you were suggesting, but I do think probably the language can only be so strong, because if you're gonna, potentially approve a demolition with a recommendation that, we would like to see this relocated, that's probably all that can be done in that case.
I remember the redevelopment and demolition permit that you reference very well. And so the language on that was explore also. It wasn't a mandate.
Yeah, attempt. Yeah.
Attempt.
And I think I wasn't around, obviously, for the discussion of the Johnson Street demolition. But in discussing this consideration, it's complicated to go beyond the condition to explore because ultimately the application that's in front of you is for a demolition. So you would be approving a project and kind of through a condition making it become something else if it went further than the explore. If the commission were uncomfortable with a condition about exploration, you may want to consider other options like a referral or something that would give time for applicants to consider whether they would like to apply for something different. I think either way, if the demolition were approved tonight with a condition about exploring relocation, we would be seeking additional information from the applicants in order to approve that. So it would be something that the Plan Commission would have to see again. We don't have all the documentation that's required for an application for relocation at this time. So it would have to come back before the Plan Commission if that were to be pursued ultimately.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much.
Any other staff questions, or are we ready to talk about a motion? All right. Seeing none, we would take each item separately. So for item 7, which is Legistar 85410, is there a motion from the commission? Commissioner Heck.
I'd ask if Alder Verveer has input before we make a motion. It would be helpful.
Thanks. Alder Verveer. You're recognized to speak. Yes.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Commissioner Heck. Good evening, everyone. So as you heard my name mentioned in the public hearing, I have been in close communication with the applicant and Pete Taglia in terms of trying to preserve the historic resource at 427 West Mifflin Street. Let me, though, begin my remarks by just simply stating the obvious that this is a very, very welcome application for affordable housing in our community, especially downtown. You've heard me articulate time and time again in this forum my concern and about the lack of affordable housing downtown, most recently at your last meeting regarding an application also on West Mifflin Street, in that case in the 600 block, how that was entirely market rate housing. The other Mifflin Street application on tonight's agenda, obviously needing to be referred for public notice correction, also is entirely market rate proposal. So I was thrilled when the applicant contacted me with their intent to provide additional affordable housing downtown. I should add permanently affordable housing downtown, as MDC has done time and time again in our community. My concern, though, was the future of the Mets house at 427 West Mifflin Street. You see, when the Mifflander apartments were proposed by MDC many years ago now, I was assured by Lori's predecessor, Frank Staniszewski, as president of MDC and members of their board, that they recognize the historic resource that they have long owned at 427, and were literally developing around it when they developed the Mifflander. Obviously, with the increasing need for more affordable housing in Madison, and as you all know, housing in general in Madison, their thinking on that has now changed. I take very seriously the Landmarks Commission's advice to all of you, as I know each of you do as well, and I very much appreciate Commissioner Heck's line of questioning on how serious the efforts are to preserve this historic resource. So in an attempt to get a little further on that, as you heard from Lisa, I did ask her to research conditions that have been approved by this body in the past. And the one language that staff seems supportive of, that you already heard articulated again by Lisa, as Commissioner Heck remembers very well, is a proposal in the Tenny Lapham neighborhood that was fairly controversial at the time, to say the least. That project did have that condition, again, added by the commission. I've discussed with the applicant the language of that condition, and do believe that it's appropriate for me to state that the applicant has no objection to a condition that states the following in regards to saving this historic resource. So the language that Lori specifically says that she is can support would read as follows, quote, "The applicant shall work with interested parties in their attempt to relocate the structure currently at 427 West Mifflin Street to another lot, preferably in downtown Madison." And I can repeat that if anyone's interested, later. But let me just publicly commend Pete for trying to do the right thing here. He has talked to me off and on for many years now about the vacant lot that he has in the Monona Bay neighborhood, and has asked me, are there any good candidates on the horizon to relocate an existing structure to the lot there. When I ran into him a few months ago, actually literally on West Washington Avenue, and told him I was so happy to see him because, yes, there is what I would consider one of the most beautiful, if not the most attractive homes in the Mifflin neighborhood that is now potentially facing the wrecking ball and could end up in the landfill. And I explained that it's primarily considered a historic resource because it's designed by one of Madison's more noted architects, Ferdinand Cronenberg. And so anyway, to make a long story short, obviously Pete has done a tremendous amount of work with building inspection, with planning division staff, with researching local house movers, working and meeting with MG&E, obviously in communication with the applicant here. I just wish that the applicant and Pete had been able to reach terms that perhaps could make this a really win-win that could be codified tonight by the commission with these various agenda items being approved with tremendous enthusiasm. Obviously, I think most of you probably feel that you probably are at such a place tonight, and I don't mean to say that you aren't, but I really would ask that the applicant continue to work so seriously, not that they haven't previously, in trying to find additional financial resources to ensure the relocation of this historic resource. I very much appreciate that the applicant, at the very first neighborhood meeting we had, publicly agreed to compensate anyone that wishes to save this resource and move it for the cost of the demolition, including environmental remediation. So I greatly appreciate that and appreciate you, Lori, and your board for agreeing to that. I just wish that we could make the numbers work so that this really is a done deal come August, when these three homes otherwise would be demolished following the conclusion of the current residential leases there. So once again, I applaud the addition of this permanent affordable housing downtown, the increased density downtown, and applaud the at least initial steps that have been made to relocate this historic structure and hope that we can get that done as well. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Alder Verveer. Alder Uguer.
Yeah, this is a question for Alder Verveer. Perchance, do you know if there has been any exploration of, not by the applicant, but by Mr. Talia as we work through the opportunities here to relocate 427. Of the available CDBG funds through community development for the preservation of existing affordable housing, this might fall in that general category. And I was just wondering if there had been any exploration of that possibility to resolve what sounds like a relatively small gap in the financing to make this relocation possible.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you for the great suggestion, Alder. I don't believe, based on my personal knowledge, that Pete has had the opportunity to explore with our city CDBG staff the possibility of any home funds or other funds for rehab that might be available in that regard. It's something that certainly I hope is a potential option for him. He and I and the applicant have talked about some other options some other financial tools that might be available to him, but nothing that is definitive that I think any of us could say is close to a sure thing tonight. But certainly appreciate the suggestion, and I'm sure Pete will follow up with that.
Yeah, and that would be my thought. There is a little bit of time here, as you've pointed out, and given the general nature of the condition that you've described here in your discussions with Lori Heineman, that might provide an opportunity to at least explore that additional possibility on the part of Mr. Talia. Thank you.
Thank you again.
Are we ready for a motion on the demo permit for this project? Commissioner Heck.
Thank you. I'm scrolling around in my agenda to get to the right item. This is item number 7. Yes.
Yes.
I will move approval of the demolition permit to demolish a single-family residence, a two-family residence, and a 4-unit apartment building at 423, 425, and 427 West Mifflin Street, subject to the conditions in the staff report related to the demolition, as well as an additional condition using the language suggested by Alder Verveer, which I will attempt to paraphrase, that the applicant work with interested parties to relocate 427 West Mifflin to a location in the downtown area. And I guess we didn't put a time limit on that in that language, as I recall. So I'll leave it at that and see if anybody wants to correct me.
Thanks, Commissioner Heck. Is there nobody's jumping in to correct. Is there a second for Commissioner Heck's motion? Alder Field. Thank you. We have a motion and a second to approve the demolition permit for item 7. Any discussion? Any objection to unanimous approval for this item? Commissioner Wisniewski.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I couldn't get my hand up for discussion. I'm struggling with this just from the timeline of would it be better just to refer it or to let this go forward? So I would prefer a roll call vote or a voice vote on this, because I think I'd vote against it in its current form.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second, and we can, if anyone on the commission would like to comment on Commissioner Wisniewski's question about referral, we can have that discussion, or we could proceed to a roll call vote. Commissioner Heck.
I don't think it's a bad suggestion to refer either this item or, I'm sorry, just 427, or do it together just to keep them together. I don't think it makes much of a difference. I'm curious if I can ask a question of staff about that prospect, if that's okay.
Yes.
I don't know if, Lisa, I don't know if that came up in your discussions about referring this, and if you have any opinion about any implications of doing so.
I mean, I think it could potentially, right, allow the applicant to make a determination as to whether or not, they're going to be able to come to an agreement on the relocation. If the concern is that you want more information and that you might get that with the referral, or that it might allow the applicant to seriously consider relocating the building and provide those materials. But one thing to keep in mind is that with the certified survey map, if the city doesn't make a decision within 90 days, then the certified survey map is automatically approved, unless we have agreement from the applicant to extend that deadline. So we would, if they did not agree to extending that, then it would need to be referred to this next Plan Commission meeting on the 2nd, December 2nd, so that council could make a decision within that time frame. Or we would need agreement that they would be willing to extend it in case they aren't able to come back, with updated materials by the December 2nd meeting.
And one thing I will just add to the consideration of a referral, Commissioner Heck, I heard you make the distinction between, the 427 and the other properties that are included in this demolition request, which I think could be an appropriate way to split that question. However, as Lisa had mentioned in her staff presentation of this item, the land use application that is before you as item 8 depends on the decision on the underlying demolitions. So it would be our recommendation that if you were to refer any portion of the demolition question, that you would refer the conditional use and the CSM accompanying those, and refer them to the same meeting, subject to what Lisa said about the timeline associated with the CSM.
Thank you. Well, after hearing that, I think I'm going to stick with my original motion, although I definitely appreciate what Commissioner Wasniewski was up to. I feel like as they're pulling together all the financing and all the pieces of this redevelopment that I think we really want to see move forward, although we haven't taken a vote yet. I think I'll stick with my original motion, but thank you.
Commissioner Sands.
Thank you, Chair. And I also just wanted to, again, lift up Megan. I believe that you also said that there is not currently anything submitted to staff yet regarding this relocation. So if everyone was able to come to an agreement, we would see that again in Plan Commission at some point in the future.
Yeah, ultimately, you would have to see an application for the relocation. Specifically, the things that are not included in the demolition application are the report from the city forester on the impact on street trees, and I believe any information about the receiving site and the location of how the building would be moved to it. So those are the things that would have to come back to the Plan Commission in order to approve that. And I believe in this case, it would probably, we don't really have alterations to demolitions in the same way we do to other plans, but it would kind of be like an alteration or a replacement approval for that demolition.
Thank you. And then just another question too, what would the timeline look like for that? Just given, what we've heard for the anticipated timeline for demo, do we feel like there's enough time for them to come to an agreement and then appropriately submit that plan for all the review?
It's a great question. I think it would have to be worked on fairly quickly, but I believe based on what Kevin Burrow and the other folks representing the applicant team suggested, that there could be time for that work to happen.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Wisniewski.
Based on the clarification I got on timelines and how things have to happen, I will withdraw my request for roll call vote.
Thank you. All right, I'll call the question again. Is there any objection to unanimous approval for Commissioner Heck's motion as seconded? All right. Seeing none, we'll record that item as unanimously approved. Thanks for the good discussion. This is a tricky one. That would bring us to item 8, Legistar 85411. Is there a motion on this item? This is the consideration of conditional use for the project. Commissioner Heck.
This one's a little bit more straightforward. I'll move approval of consideration of a conditional use in the DR2 district for a multifamily dwelling with greater than 8 units to allow construction of a 4-story, 40-unit apartment building at 423 to 427 West Mifflin Street, subject to the conditions in the staff report.
Thanks, Commissioner Heck. Alderfield, is that your second? Thank you. Any discussion on this item? Commissioner Heck.
Thank you. I just wanted to recognize all the good work of the neighborhood in Alder Revere on this and appreciated all his remarks. I do have one odd observation is that the developers are proposing naming this building the Cronenberg in honor of the architect, and I live at a building called the Cronenberg that is a condominium, although it's in German, Das Cronenberg. So I already communicated with Lori Heineman and suggested they find another name, but I hope they do, because I think that's going to be rather confusing. But I'm enthusiastic about supporting this project. Thanks.
Thanks, Commissioner Heck. All right. Any objection to unanimous approval for this item? All right. Seeing none, we'll record that as such. And that brings us to item 9, which is Legistar 85625. Is there a motion on this item? You're going to run the table, Commissioner Heck.
I might as well, now that I'm on a roll. I'll move approval of a certified survey map of the property owned by Madison Development Corp. located at 423 to 427 West Mifflin Street.
Thank you. Alderfield? Yep. I'll take that as a second on the motion. Any discussion for this item? And seeing none, any objection to unanimous approval for the certified survey map is moved and seconded. All right, thank you. We'll record that as approved. And that will bring us to business by members. Is there any open business by members that commissioners would like to raise for discussion tonight? All right. Then that we'll move to the secretary's report. Megan, it's your time to shine.
After all this. Okay, so thank you, Chair. Just a couple items to note. Obviously, as you know from tonight's agenda, that we referred a number of projects from tonight's agenda to our December 2nd agenda. So we will be including those. You'll also see a couple of projects that had previously been referred to this agenda, and a couple other new projects, including a multi-unit building at what is called Midpoint Meadows on Marty Farm Road, and a number of demolitions in the South Madison area. I'll also note that we will provide these dates to you for referral at your next meeting. But we have been working to prepare for the referral of the Urban Design Commission Code Update Project to the spring of 2025. So we will provide the specific date for you there. This was referred by the Urban Design Commission at their meeting, or will be referred by the Urban Design Commission at their meeting this Wednesday, as well. So we look forward to opportunities to be able to provide you with some updates on that project, as well as refer those dates for formal action to give us time to do the work that's associated with it.
Thanks, Megan. And I think, I think it will be a substantial agenda next to when we meet next. Any other announcements from the commission for tonight's meeting? All right. Seeing none, we could, I can ask for a motion to adjourn. Alderfield, thank you. And Commissioner Wisniewski, thank you. Any objection to unanimous approval? Seeing none, we will adjourn the meeting. Thanks, everybody, for good questions and problem solving tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.